So firstly, good afternoon. So as was mentioned, my name is Stu Taylor. I'm the CEO of Algomi. And for those of us, or for those who don't know us, we're basically a very fast growing fintech firm. We're about 4 years old. We're from four founders. We've grown to over 120 employees. We have offices in New York, in London, and in Hong Kong. In the last 12 months, Euromoney named Algomi as the sort of global fintech innovation of the year. The Wall Street Journal's Financial News has named us as most innovative trading platform globally, and Risk Magazine called us Trading Product of the Year. But we don't deal generally in liquid exchange-traded products. Instead, what we really do is run an information network using big data in bond markets. But we're not really a trading company. We're an information company with a difference. And that difference is we deal in private data. So I'm going to start by saying most of the information in the market is not in the public domain. You can spend thousands a year on a terminal for every one of your front office staff. You can buy every bolt-on feed, but you still won't really know what's actually going on in the market. And just to explain that, there are at least 80 sell-side firms making markets in credit in Europe alone, and trading with them are over 2,000 investment management firms actively trading and managing fixed income portfolios. Do you know what all of them are doing right now? Of course not. Even though you've bought a terminal, you've got live news, you can buy every price feed, but you don't know who's just traded what, who's trying to buy and sell what, with whom are they trying to trade, which electronic inquiries have happened over the last week or so on products that you care about, that maybe you own. Who's getting an allocation on the new issue, or maybe who didn't get a full allocation and wants more. And beyond, some loose public filings, you don't even know who actually owns which bonds with any certainty. And you certainly don't know, which salesperson has the best call into that other client anyway. And on top of that, even the prices that you're getting, you're not even sure that they're real. The prices you're using to value your portfolio, what would happen if I suddenly tried to trade it? Would it suddenly have a serious price adjustment that I'd need to swallow? And indeed, the underlying market activity for bonds that you may own, is it increasing or decreasing? But somebody knows that information, but that someone is A, keeping it private because it might give them an informational advantage because they're generally one of the parties to that interaction. Maybe they're a buy-side firm or a sell-side firm. But in many cases, not even allowed to legally share it. And B, it's not actually a someone, but a some many. The information in the market can only really be answered when you think of all the interactions across the market by all participants. And what this means is the data landscape in almost every market, but certainly the bond market, is really very, very fragmented. But also the amount of data out there is much, much larger than the traditional view of market data. So when you think about consolidated price and news feeds, they don't really sum it up at all. Great, you say, but that's never going to change. Firms are never going to share all this information. And actually, you'd be right, they won't. They will never share this information. But it doesn't mean the insight trapped inside this data has to remain locked away. And this is where a different technique to managing data is required. So almost every platform we have in the market right now is a hub. If you think about all the major e-platforms, and I'm sure you can name them all. If you think about all the major market data solutions, they're all giant hubs asking firms to connect and publish their data in. The problem is firms don't want to put their private data into somebody else's hub. So the first part of the solution is to create a private information hub for each participant. So no firm will put their data into a third-party hub, but if they own the hub for their own exclusive use, then this completely reverses the situation. I'll happily put all my data into my hub as a bank, as an investor, as long as my data, my interactions, my insights, my edge stays on my hub, then I'll use it to make my portfolio managers or my dealers, my salespeople, my traders, whoever, smarter. And in fact, I'll try and put as much data on that hub to give my firm the biggest informational advantage I can. Great, and if each firm does this, all we've done, though, is really created a series of private data islands. not connected. Now, inside a single firm, anyone managing trades at least knows what their own firm collectively knows, so it's a slight step forward, but we still haven't answered any of the questions about that extra data that I asked earlier. And as a firm, they're still not sharing that data. And so the second part of the solution, and this is really what's been pioneered and patented by Algomi, is the concept of data signposts. So rather than build a system that asks everyone to publish this private data, what Algomi does is inform participants on the network, firstly, just that the relevant data exists, and then secondly, where to find it. i.e. we show that the data is there, we don't show the actual data itself. So let's take an example. Say a specific bond that trades maybe 5 times a year, which, by the way, is probably most bonds. An investor looking to sell that bond 3 weeks ago maybe spoke to a bank, but didn't manage to get a trade done. But that information is actually very useful to a second investor today who's trying to buy that bond or something similar. So that's what we do. We just provide a signpost to the investor. We tell them they should approach a specific bank who should be able to help. We don't ask the bank to reveal the inquiry, its size, any target price discussions, or the name of any of the other investors. All of that remains private. All that gets shown is the signpost. And the investor looking at the signpost can be sure it's real. It's validated data. And when the investor approaches the bank, the private information hub kicks in and tells the salesperson taking the call all they need to do to get the trade done. So now that private data, that never before seen data, that highly valuable data, was merely signposted, but we're generating trades that probably wouldn't have happened before. And we certainly couldn't have made the connection and got across the market at a speed in this way. So our information network in this new paradigm is basically been formed on the fly. You can think it almost as node hopping. We'll give you a signpost to where you might find the data you're looking for. And when you reach out, the person you've connected to will be told who they need to connect to. Maybe a fellow salesperson in their own firm, maybe their trader. Again, they'll be told to reach out and connect to another end client. The key point is the private data never leaves the firm that owns it, but the signposts means we get insight from the massive amounts of never-before-seen data coming into the market. And that's really what Algomi does, which probably makes us unique from almost every other technology company operating in the capital markets space. We run a network called Honeycomb. We now have 18 banks fully contracted with another actually 12 in negotiation. We've got over 250 of the world's largest investment managers signed up on the platform. Over 180 of them are now active as well on Honeycomb. So when you start to think of data signposts rather than price feeds and news feeds, you start to build an entirely new data ecosystem, one that conceivably can include every bit of data out there. Inquiries on the 8 out of 10 trade attempts that never print, unfilled new issue allocations, bond holdings data from custodian firms, e-platform inquiries. As long as it's being captured by someone, then we can think of ways to signpost the data and provide a roadmap of how to get a trade done. And in this way, signposts are creating liquidity. Now, crucially, they don't disintermediate anyone. Those who have the private data get signposted too. And in fact, more trades flow to them. No change in market structure, but more velocity of trade flow for everyone. This is not about digitizing the trade itself, but digitizing the whole environment. This is much closer to Google's approach of trying to get close to all of humanity's knowledge, rather than Amazon's approach of trying to make the transaction as efficient as possible. This method of signposting to private hubs has one other advantage. It uses information as a substitute for inventory. In effect, it creates a virtual balance sheet. Banks can now start to advertise what they know, not just what they own. It's exactly the same strategy that Airbnb and Uber used to dominate the hotels and taxi business. Take Airbnb, now has over twice the number of rooms that Intercontinental Hotel Group does. But Airbnb owns no rooms. It just has a network of rooms available. It took Intercontinental about 35 years to get itself to its current point. It's taken Airbnb just 8 years to double it, let alone the $40 billion market capitalization that it's developed. Virtual inventory works. So what are we doing with Euronext? You may have seen in November that Euronext announced a 10-year deal with Algomi, and we've actually formed a joint venture called Algomi. What we're doing is we're making use of these signposts to make bond trading work smarter. Algomi is not and will never be a trading venue. We're not regulated, and it's not our intent to enter the transaction landscape. But some of the signposts we receive show that a large number of missed buy-side transactions would have benefited from interbank trading. In fact, our data shows that almost 50% of unfilled inquiries would have benefited from the collective networks of more than one bank operating together. Today, those banks don't share, but using signposts, they can be connected without disintermediation. And all of this is to the end benefit of the investor clients who can get across the market more efficiently, more quietly, and with less information leakage, and crucially, at the right time to ensure best chance and price of trade. And this is what Euronext will be bringing to the market. To give an example, say a French insurance company speaks to a French bank to help sell some illiquid bonds. The French bank may find a buyer, but similarly, they may also struggle. However, if a German bank has seen an inquiry from a German client on a similar bond maybe 10 days earlier, then using signposts, Euronext can come to the rescue. So under this approach, the French client continues to speak to the French bank. But using the market Euronext will be launching, the French bank is also able to receive an alert that there's a signpost to another bank should they need to source a buyer. And they're basically invited to connect. Should they do so, the German bank is told they get an invite, and they're prompted to get their client back on the phone and see if they're still interested in buying, as a suitable bond has now become available. So Euronext sits in the middle. It preserves anonymity between the dealer counterparts, and of course, as a regulated exchange, even the signposts used to facilitate this trade are segregated and subject to regulatory protection. As I mentioned, data from Algomi's Honeycomb network already being used with 250 buy-side firms suggests that almost 50% of liquid trades will benefit from this sort of approach. We think it's going to drive a significant pickup in market discovery and liquidity. Transaction models like the one I've just described are really just the beginning. We've got solutions being developed for pricing, for indices, for bond holdings data, actually for telephony, many other applications where there's data that surrounds this industry that's not currently in the public domain, but actually could give crucial insight to get trades done. So we think the data industry is about to be turned on its head. So hopefully I've given you some food for thought. We're about to get you access to data that you'd never have dreamed possible. You still have to trade with the counterparts who own the data. The market structure is going to stay exactly the same. Investment managers will manage funds, banks will trade with their clients. But your ability to gain true insights and navigate the market more efficiently will drive velocity. And this will convert into truly incremental liquidity that the bond market so desperately needs. So thank you for listening.